Lovely. Okay, thank you so much, Steph. Hello, my name is Sarah, and I am really, really delighted to be with you this morning and to be taking part in this World Childless Week. And I'm going to be spending the next 45 minutes or so looking at four practical ways that we can deal, or four practical approaches of dealing with the question, do you have children? So it's very much tips for handling this collection without getting into panic, without feeling overwhelmed. And I am a yoga teacher and transformational life coach. So I'm going to be guiding you through some tools and techniques that I found helpful personally, as well as in the work that I do. So this question can be answered with real confidence and peace. So over the next 45 minutes, as I said, I'm going to be sharing a system that I've created for myself. So I'm sharing something with you that I have very much used and developed myself to help me with answering the question, do you have children? And it's very much something, as somebody who is childless, not by choice, that I have found really helpful. And I use the acronym from the word calm. So the letters CALM, really helping me to feel calm as I answer this question. But each one has provided a framework. So I'm delighted to be offering this at the start of this day where we're going to really explore this topic and question. And I hope that with some of the later speakers as well and the discussion panel that's going to be taking place, it's going to provide some real support and comfort for you around this question. So we're going to be exploring this morning, or this afternoon or this evening, wherever you are. We're going to be exploring mindful techniques and some exercises that are going to get you to move a little bit, and also some journal prompts and some points for self-questioning, whether just in this moment or later on after this particular webinar. So by the end of our time together this morning, or this evening or this afternoon, you will have a number of empowering and easy to use tools and tips that will be quick to remember so that you can really navigate some of the social gatherings or work meetings with that greater sense of confidence. So that when you're faced with that question, do you have children, you will be feeling sure, clear, strong, free and steady in your response and in who you are. So just at the start, to provide a little bit of context and background as we're starting this day together. So I'm just wondering why this question is such a big one and what feelings can arise when we're faced with it. So to give you a little bit of a background to why I came up with this acronym CALM, my journey trying to conceive ended without becoming a parent. And the close of this chapter in my life came around about 10 years ago. And I can't recall the amount of times during that time of trying to conceive that I was asked that question in social gatherings, work environment, meeting people in just casual conversation in the street or on public transport. And even now, I would say that I'm asked this question pretty much regularly, so maybe even on a weekly basis. It's a question that's part of small talk, really, isn't it? And it's how others get to know you and relate to your experiences. And sometimes it's just because people are curious about your life choices, your family situation. I think sometimes we can really feel a tension when we hear that question, but actually it's not always something which is a negative question that someone's trying to probe about your life. It's actually just part of that question that is trying to make sense of who you are. But it can really catch us off guard, depending on what the situation is, depending on the mood that we're in. You know, sometimes we can feel stronger some days than we do the other. It can be quite emotionally painful and a trigger for deeper feelings. And I've certainly found it sometimes to be really intrusive and unwelcome. And you can feel really judged and disconnected from that other person or the people around us when that question is asked. And, you know, we get some responses, you know, which can be really unhelpful. I've certainly had it where it's like, oh, wow, you know, when I say I don't have children, oh, you're so lucky to have all that freedom. And in fact, even just a couple of days ago, a friend of mine fell into that trap and just said, oh, your life must be so free of drama because you don't have kids. So there are assumptions aplenty. So I know that feeling of when it taps into my insecurities, it can really impact my mood, sense of self and sense of self-esteem. So it's definitely a question that is a big one to navigate, which is why we're spending this day together looking at it. So how can we cope with this question? So this webinar rather, is very much about the practical. So how can we cope with this question? So I invite you to join me in exploring this framework, CALM, that I've explained. And you can take away the thoughts from today to make this framework your own, or maybe generating ideas for yourself. So hopefully the tips are really simple that you can weave into your day, into your week, and very much treat them as a menu that you can explore and pick up when you need, rather than a to-do list and you've got to do all of these in a particular order. They're very much there to use as and when you need them. Okay, so let's dive in. So firstly, I'm going to start with the letter C from the word calm. And letter C stands for creating confidence and creating answers to the question in advance. Although we don't always know when this question is going to arise, it's a good guess that it's going to arrive when we meet people for the first time, when we don't know them. So whether that's a family or friends gathering, or as I said, in a work environment, or maybe out, just, meeting people just generally. Or maybe there's a relative you know who just won't let the subject go and they keep asking. So being prepared and having some pre-prepared answers up your sleeve is, I have found, a real key to having confidence as you confront these situations. So firstly, I want us to explore how we can create and deepen that sense of self-confidence. And so this is a mindfulness practice, and it's going to take 5 minutes. That's all. And you can do this very much any time in advance of a meeting or gathering that you're going to face. So whether that's the day before, the week before, or just a few minutes before. And this technique is going to tap into your inner resourcefulness and strength to enable you to connect with that sense of confidence before that situation where you potentially going to face that question, do you have children? So you can take part in this mindfulness practice if you wish with me now. You can just listen, you can make notes, or you can just be as you wish to be in this moment. But if you'd like to take part in just this 5-minute mindfulness technique, then this is an invitation to connect to your body as a source of wisdom, as a source of safeness and ease in those moments of anxiety and calm. So I just invite you to place everything around you to one side. Maybe no distractions, so that you're kind of in this moment distracted by the cat or by whatever's going on outside, so that you know that you've got this space and it's nice and quiet and that you feel you can spend this moment just with yourself. So wherever you are, just maybe shift some of that morning energy. If you're starting early, as Steph said, maybe just give yourself a bit of a stretch, or connect to some of that energy, whatever's going on at the time of day that you're watching this. And I just invite you to roll your shoulders up to your ears and down the back, just to release any tension, anything that might be just tightness in your shoulders. So wherever you are, if you're sat down, just uncross the legs, place your feet firmly on the ground, feet hip distance apart, and just begin to connect to the solidity of the ground beneath you. So allowing those feet to feel really connected to the ground. So not just with your balls of your feet or the heels, but just every part of your feet, just feeling the solidity of that ground beneath you. Just maybe shift around in your chair so you're feeling comfortable. You're okay to sit here quietly for a couple of minutes. Lengthen the spine, and that just means allowing softness in the spine, so you don't feel like you're sitting rigidly with your shoulders in a place. You've just got that natural S-bend in your spine. Feel that you're not slouching forwards, but you've got some feeling of purpose in this seated position. Chin parallel to the ground. And placing your hands gently on your lap, either your hands resting on top of each other or with your palms down or up on your knees. And finding a soft gaze, either at a point in front of you, something that's still, so not moving, or maybe down towards the ground. Maybe your gaze comes down towards the ground. Or if you feel you'd like, you can maybe even close your eyes. And I invite you to take 3 deep breaths, just beginning to lengthen that inhalation and then deepening the exhalation. Noticing your breath as you breathe in and breathing out. And feeling your body really relaxing and settling into this chair, into this moment. Allowing yourself to arrive into this space. And just noticing your inhalation and your exhalation. And as we're here in this place of grounding and connection, I invite you to consider a time when you felt really confident and really in control. A time when you felt able and capable. Maybe it's a work event or a meeting when you felt really on top of things. Or maybe when you're receiving praise for what you were doing and achieving. Or maybe it's a time with family and friends when you felt accepted and you were experiencing the comfort of those you love around you. Or maybe even it's been a time when you've been on holiday and you've had a moment when you feel really relaxed and at peace. Or if you're wanting a sense of energizing and feeling energized, maybe it's an exercise class when you felt really in flow. Just spend a couple of moments bringing this event to mind. I invite you to think about what are the sights and the surrounds around you in this particular time when you felt so on top of things. What did this moment feel like? And as you connect to this memory, the emotions and the experience, just be aware this is a place of real power, your personal power, that can support you. And you can connect to time and again to boost your confidence and your sense of self in really challenging situations. Just spend a couple more moments just reveling in this place of power, this place of confidence. And know that at any time you can return to this memory and this feeling, knowing that it will bring you a sense of confidence to empower you. Just take a couple of moments more just to feel this sense of connection. And now I invite you to bring your awareness back to your breath. Feeling the rise and the fall of your breath across your body, your rib cage, your belly. Feeling a deep sense of relaxation. And now connecting to your hands, maybe wiggling your fingers, stretching, flexing your fingers in, out. Maybe now just moving your legs, your feet. Again, feeling that connection with the ground, solidity of the ground beneath you. And bringing yourself back to this space, with your gaze maybe just coming back to this screen, opening your eyes gently if you had them closed. Great. Lovely. I wonder how that felt for you if you took part in that exercise. How do you feel now that you've connected to this place of personal power? Maybe if you've got a pen and paper, you can just jot down a couple of words that just help you to remember that. And it's something that you can do at any time now that you have found this place and you connected with that memory. You can do it at any stage before you go to any gathering. If you just want that boost of self-confidence, you can connect to that inner strength, and you have that power to create the confidence and comfort and contentedness just as you are, without any labels, without any identity as a childless, child-free person. You are just being you, tapping to your inner resources, which sometimes we feel we don't have, or we feel that they are difficult to reach. Beautiful, lovely. So that's stage one of our first letter C. So that's very much creating confidence. So it's building ourselves up, and possibly a really good one to do at the start of this day as well. We're thinking about building up that sense of self and confidence across this day. But let's go to the next stage of the letter C, which is creating our answers to the question, do you have children? And this is very much a journal prompt. So again, if you've got a pen and paper, I invite you just to make notes as we go along, or maybe there's something that you think, oh yeah, I'll come back to that later. So they're very much prompts. So I would just like to start by saying you always have a choice how you answer the question, do you have children? Sometimes it can feel that it makes us spin out of control, but actually it would really, if we have prepared questions, and it puts us firmly back into control. I've definitely known situations in the past and sometimes now where I felt really thrown and overwhelmed by that question. And it's propelled me into all those feelings that we can find ourselves when we are childless, not by choice. Some of those shame, the guilt, embarrassment, grief, feeling slightly disconnected from other people, feeling awkward with the answer that we're going to give. So preparing a few answers in the quiet and comfort of your own space, I have found can really set you up when you know that question is going to pop up. So preparing those responses when you feel happy, when you feel really grounded and in control. So maybe after that mindfulness technique that we've just done together, that's a really good time to then be thinking, right, okay, how will I going to, respond? So having this bank of responses that you can call on just before an event, so prompts that you can remind yourself, or taking a moment of peace to find the responses specific to an occasion. So I remember going to being invited to a baby shower. That is a classic time when I just knew that that was going to be a time when I would feel really overwhelmed and feel potentially on the back foot. So having some responses really helped me to feel in control as I entered into that room and into that occasion. There are lots of childless not by choice forums on social media. I'm sure you are probably all very aware and familiar with them. So it's a question that comes up quite often in those forums. You can check out those responses from other people and make notes of the ones that appeal to you. Or I just find that AI now really helps to create or to hone a combination of your own answers and maybe adapting some that already people have recommended. But I found that there are three main types of responses that you could be preparing or considering. So the first one is the bold approach. So it's just that plain no. When somebody says, do you have children? No. And feeling confident in that, not feeling like you owe anybody any explanations. I think sometimes we feel, oh, I've got to justify myself. I've got to justify this explanation. And just then you can run away with yourself. I've certainly found myself in that situation where then I've just gabbled a response and then it's just kind of made it awkward. And I feel dreadful when I leave that question and, step back. A smile is always a nice thing, I think, to help at that point. It helps you, it helps the other person as well. But you can expand on it with something like, yeah, being a parent wasn't something I was able to become. Or maybe, thanks for this question, but it's not the place at the moment where I feel comfortable to discuss this. Or maybe, yeah, it's just it's a private matter for me. So if you'd mind, I'd just rather not discuss this now. Or if you know a family member or friend, you could just say, I know you're asking that because you care, but actually it's really personal and I've decided to keep it private. So it's being bold with your response, but it's just maybe backing it up with something else. And I certainly remember a time when I wished that I had been a little bit more bold with my response, and that I wish I'd had some responses up my sleeve, especially when somebody doesn't take no for an answer. And I certainly remember a persistent questioner. And I was on a train, and at the time I was commuting to my job, and I was sat down on a train. It was a busy train. A guy sat next to me who had clearly, it was the end of the day. He was also a commuter, possibly had a few drinks at the bar before he got on the train, or in those days when the train, had a bar on there. And so he was very freely asking questions. And I was there with my book, head down, thinking, don't ask me, don't talk to me. I just want to get on with my day and my questions. But anyway, the question came up, do you have children? And I just, in that moment, was feeling flummoxed and thinking, I just don't want to talk to you. I don't want to have that question answered. And I just fumbled around my answer, which gave him more of an opportunity to ask me another question and yet something else and something else, until I eventually kind of just thought, oh, it's a busy, crowded train. There were loads of commuters around. It was quite quiet. I didn't want to be explaining myself, A, to this guy in the first place, but then B, with lots of people around. So I felt if I'd had a bold response, then I could have had something that would have just nipped that question in the bud and stopped something just getting out of control, because it very much felt to me like that was out of my control. So another approach to thinking about how to answer that question is maybe a little bit more of a subtle approach. So apart from the bold answers, there are subtle ones that you might just say, yeah, it wasn't in the stars for me, it wasn't my story. So they're slightly softer and might be easier for you to feel happier about that conversation. Or you can explain, as always, oh, I've got great nieces and nephews or significant children in my life, if that's something, an approach you want to take. Or maybe you talk about your pets. I certainly know people who do that. I don't have pets of my own, but that's another way. And it's okay to be a bit vague, and you don't have to give a full account of your life and experiences. I think sometimes we feel, gosh, I've got to now explain who I am or what I'm doing. A good option I found is to redirect that question back to the questioner without having to provide details. So you could say, no, I don't have children. Do you? Because I usually feel that people are more than happy to talk about themselves. So by flipping that question back to them, and if you don't mind hearing them talk about their children, then that's fine. But that's another option. I think a third approach that you could take, thinking about sort of answers in advance, is a humorous approach. So that could be, if somebody said, do you have questions? You could say, no, but I'm an amazing aunt. Just ask my niece. Or you could kind of find ways of dealing it around that. And as I said, if you have any caregiving role or about pets, then I know people who say, oh, yeah, I've got, 5 cats, or I've got fur babies, or you can then kind of get it round that way, and that's a really good way of maybe deflecting, and just bringing some humor again. Forums are really helpful for that, or AI is really good if you're wanting to come up with an approach. Personally, I don't think being sort of abrupt and rude helps. I know that can sometimes, if you're feeling a little bit angry with the question, or there's that emotion that comes up and you're thinking, oh, do you know what? I don't really want to answer that question. You can kind of feel kind of like a bit abrupt about it. But actually, I just think sometimes with a smile really helps. And actually, you could even think of it if you felt in the position where you were feeling really empowered and you felt okay about answering the question. You could see it as an opportunity to advocate for people who don't have children, especially in a work situation. And you could gently suggest that asking that question could be a bit of a trigger for some. And it might be say, look, actually asking a colleague that you've never met before, you don't know their story, and it could be really helpful if you maybe didn't choose that question. Or maybe educate the asker. I've certainly done that, maybe where I felt a little bit more confident and I knew the situation a little bit more easily. But you could just say, in the UK, 1 in 6 people are unable to have children. So you could have some statistics that you could do. So advocating for somebody who is childless, not by choice or child-free, is a great potential response for that. Just a word of warning, I would always say never cover up and create an imaginary family. And I have to say, I put this one in because my husband, to my amazement, recently told me, only in the last couple of weeks, how he was at the barber's literally last month. And he was asked the question, do you have children? And he responded yes, because he thought he would shut down and close down the question. But actually what it did was open it up into a minefield. So then the asker continued, and my husband had to weave this story together, which got more and more complicated and excruciating. And then when the asker said, oh, my children go to the same school as my imaginary husband's child, it was like, oh my goodness, and he got himself more and more wrapped up. So yeah, try and avoid that one, I would suggest. And so if somebody doesn't take no for an answer, like that guy that I experienced on the train, and they repeatedly ask you, you could take a moment just to pause and reframe that situation. And as I said, just flip it back. So you could say, I'm intrigued as to why it's so important to you whether I have children. Why is it that you're so questioning? What is it that you are finding so interesting? Particularly maybe if it's that kind of relative who just keeps asking that question. And even when you've had those well-intentioned responses like, oh, but you'd be such a good parent, you'd be such a great parent, I've had that myself, then in that instance, I'm just saying, accepting the compliment, saying thank you, and maybe moving on the chat is also a great way to respond. Okay, so we've looked at C, and we've looked at creating confidence. We've looked at creating answers in advance. So we've got some tools. We've already got some things to help us in advance of a situation where we think we're going to confront that question. So we're going to move to look at the letter A, which stands for attitude. So how we approach our childless status can impact how we very much respond to, do we have children, that question. And if we feel in a good place in ourselves, it might be easier to apply without feeling triggered. So that's why that mindful technique can be so useful. But on days when maybe we find ourselves with busy schedules, stressed by life in general, and just not feeling so great about ourselves and what's going on for us, it can be difficult to dig deep and to cope. So certainly my train guy, that chat with him came at the end of a busy week when I just wanted to have my head down in my book and getting on with my life. So that's why I think that unexpected question really hit me so powerfully. It's why I remember it now, because of the emotion that I can connect to in that time. So I invite you very much to see how you can shift that attitude, either in advance of a situation when that question's being asked. You can connect back to that inner strength, just like we did with that mindfulness technique. Or maybe how you can think of yourself in that moment when you need that little bit of a boost of confidence. Because confidence is an extremely powerful feeling that helps us to feel seen and heard, and also to be feeling strong in our child-free status. So it's definitely a feeling that we can practice and nurture and strengthen, rather than feeling that we're all depleted and destroyed by that. So attitude is very much increasing that sense of confidence to lift and build in the moment. And I found two really helpful ways of doing this. Firstly, affirmations and intentions. And sometimes I'm sure you've all seen affirmations, maybe you know of affirmations, you've got things that you already use. But I found having positive sayings or quotes or affirmations really helpful. And I did this just the other day with something really simple, like, you've got this. And just spending time just in that present moment, yeah, you've got this. And that really helped in that moment, just to calm my nervous system and to connect me back to something that I found really empowering. It's really useful to have some of those on your phone. So if you're in a meeting or in a social setting, you can just flip your phone and just look at it, and you know that you've got it, or a picture or something that reminds you of something which is really powerful for you. I was given a key ring recently, which I really love, and it said, she believed she could, so she did, and she smashed it. And I love that because I've got that on my keys, but I just look at that and I love it because it makes me smile because it remembers the person that gave it to me, but it also really is an encouraging thing for me. So whatever you find, and things like, my life has purpose and meaning, or I trust my journey. These things we sometimes think can be, oh yeah, there's that, but actually I find those things can be so empowering in the moment. Or if you know that you're going into a place where you're going to meet new work colleagues, you could set an intention for how you want to be. So, I choose to be full of confidence as a childless woman, childless person entering into this meeting. And that can really help in that moment. The second thing that we're going to look at is actually shifting our attitude by what I call body empowerment. And another tip that I found useful from my yoga practice. So if you're familiar with yoga, then you will be very familiar with the pose, mountain pose or Tadasana, which is a Sanskrit word for it. But even if you haven't, I'm going to invite you now, if you'd like, to take part in this practice pose with me. And it's such a grounding pose, and it can be so empowering. And I love the word that it's used, that it is mountain pose, because it very much can make us feel like we're on the top of a mountain, and you can visualize that very much yourself. So I'm just going to shift my computer screen, but you can prepare by inviting you to stand up, or as I said, just watching, observing, taking notes. So it's going to take just a little bit of time, just about 5 minutes. Just going to get myself standing up. And so as you stand, you're going to stand with your feet hip distance apart, with softness in your knees, with your hands hanging loose by your sides. And maybe roll those shoulders up again to the ears and down the back. And as you do so, you can find a real openness across the front of your chest. And maybe that just helps your arms to come forwards a little bit, palms facing forwards. Have your eyes open and just gazing at that soft point ahead of you, or maybe on the ground, or you can even close your eyes if you wish. Just feeling the ground beneath your feet like we did when we sat down with that mindful technique just a minute ago. Just taking this moment to connect the solidity of the ground, and that always helps to connect and ground us, to help us generate that sense of calm in the moment. And taking in 3 really cleansing and empowering breaths, in through the nose and out through the nose. Settling your mind and any thoughts that might be whirring around at this moment. Just focusing on our breath can really help bring us back to that sense of calm. Switches our nervous system from that fight and flight into that real calm place of rest. And focus again on the connection with the ground. And as you press down into the ground, just be aware of that sense of becoming taller. Really finding that peace that comes, and the serenity that can wash over your body as you connect firmly to the ground. And just as we hold this pose, spreading the feet, finding the toes really connecting in, just sensing the energy up from the feet, coming up into the legs, to the lower body, feeling the energy moving up through the torso, up across the arms, the fingers, up through your neck, your head, your brain, across all of your body. Again, releasing any tension, finding softness in the face. And as we stand in this empowering pose, bringing your attention to your heart. Breathing into your heart for 3 long, deep breaths. And maybe even bringing your hand to your heart center, your chest. Even feeling your heartbeat. And as you do so, cultivating feelings of empowerment, confidence, strength, love, and determination. Continue to stand in this pose, softening those knees, breathing deeply and feeling completely centered with every breath in, and relaxing with every breath that you take out. And know that as you stand here in this pose at the top of your mountain, that you are incredible. And breathing in this energy in this pose. And just enjoy being here for a couple of moments more. And then let yourself slowly move out of this pose. Maybe again, just wiggling those hands, maybe flexing the fingers in, just maybe stretching out one leg, bending the other. Just even just sway from just gently from side to side and opening your eyes if your eyes have been open. Coming back into this space and just taking a mindful moment to feel that transformed you maybe after doing that particular pose. What did that feel like again for you? How did that make you feel? You can also just adapt that pose to what I call a Wonder Woman pose. So if you're bending your elbows, bring your hands to the hip creases, so that point above, so not on your waist, but just a little bit lower where the top of your thigh is. And just feeling what that pose is like. Just taking a moment to connect to that. And the purpose of doing these poses isn't that you're standing in a meeting and doing these, because I think you get some strange looks or in a gathering or a social setting. But they're things to do just before you go into a meeting. And I've certainly done these in the cubicle of a toilet, so in the privacy of a space. And I've just held that pose. It doesn't have to be for long, just, maybe a few moments or a minute, depending on how long you've got and what you need to do. And if you are really somebody who's into yoga, then you can use some of the warrior poses. So warrior one, just to raise your arms up to the sky and just get that sense of connection to something bigger than yourself. And that can really empower you in that moment just before a meeting where you're thinking, yeah, I just need a little bit of confidence coming into this. Okay, lovely. So you can take your seat again, or you can remain there, up to you entirely. Lovely. So yet another moment that you can ground yourself, even when you're feeling weak and feeling centered, even if you're feeling unsure. So it's anchoring you so that you can't be knocked off course when that time comes. So we're looking at the third letter of the word calm, which is locating yourself in the present moment. So we've looked at things we can do beforehand. So creating a sense of confidence. We've got a couple of techniques that we can use there to do that. We've got a shift in our attitudes. We've got some body language, how we can be. But L is locating yourself in the present moment. So if you're in that present moment, you're in that meeting, you're in that social setting, then you can, and you've got that question coming your way. Maybe it's taking you by surprise and you've not had time to consider the occasion or prepare. Then I encourage you to locate yourself in the present moment. And those practices you can do, and you might not necessarily feel that you can do full Tadasana, but you could do that Wonder Woman pose easily, just very subtly. You don't have to even just worry about that. You can just put your hands on your hips. That can be quite a thing that you can do. So I've got 3 ways that you can shift the body language and how that can help you. So moving your body can release tension and anxiety. So as I said, you can just gently sway a little bit or move. One thing you can do, which I find sometimes I instinctively do, is as I stand, shifting weight from one side to the other, real subtle movements that nobody else will notice, but just you notice. It can also be a little bit self-soothing to rock yourself from side to side. And that's a good one that I find can really help just to ground you, just to give you a sense of pausing at that moment to gather yourself so that you feel in control. Also, I think relaxing your face, because when we're in that moment, I've certainly had a conversation and I've suddenly felt myself really tense, all the muscles in my face. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, they're going to ask that question. Have I got children? What do I say? And I'm thinking in my head, oh, I wish I hadn't said that, or oh, I wish I'd said that. And suddenly you find yourself, there's a tightness in your jaw, Or perhaps you're struggling maybe even to communicate and you find that your throat is tightening up. So releasing and relaxing your throat and your tongue can really help. So I find just releasing my jaw by bringing a little bit of space in between your upper and your top teeth. So you don't have to kind of stand there with your mouth open. It can be really subtle. So you keep your lips together, but just finding yourself allowing that bottom jaw to drop a little bit, the tongue not to be at the top of the roof of your mouth, but just to be gently relaxed in your mouth. And this is where also connecting back to the breath can help. So inhaling through the nose, and you can gently part your lips to exhale out. So again, it can be such a subtle movement that nobody else will notice. So just take a moment to maybe try that. So we're going to take an inhalation in through the nose, and then just gently parting the lips open. Don't have to make any deep sounds of a sigh out. It can be really subtle. But just allowing your mouth to open. Sometimes we do that instinctively, just to allow the breath to be released. But it's just allowing, by doing that, it's slowing the breath down again. Because when we get anxious or nervous, then our breath can speed up. And then we can kind of begin to feel out of control and that sense of anxiety arises. But just allowing that breath to come back to a sense of calm just gives you that feeling that you're in control, and it's recalibrating your nervous system. Another thing that you can do body language wise is to smile with your eyes. I've certainly tried and practiced this, and it probably does take a little bit of practice. So just gently smiling. So you're bringing the corners of your mouth. Again, you can try this in the privacy of your own home, but just gently allowing the corners of your mouth to just come up a little bit. And as you do so, you will find that the corner of your eyes will come up a little bit. And it just softens the face, and it brings a very gentle smile. Because when we smile, it signals to the body that we're okay, and it helps to calm the nervous system. It also just helps to soften our face, and particularly when we're in that exchange and that conversation, then it also helps the person who's asking you questions to feel that, yeah, you're responsive, and that they're going to have a response to their answer, to their question. So that's really locating ourselves into that present moment. We've always got the breath. That's the joy that we have. We can always connect to that breath. So finally, in the last few minutes, we're going to turn to the M of calm. So we've got framework again. So the M is moving on. So this is very much for a time after. So we've had the question, we've answered it, and sometimes our minds can then race around. And as I said, we're thinking, what did I say? How did I say that? What was the response? And we can go into this whole thing. And I found myself whirring around. And then you've lost that sense of connection to what's going on around you. So in meetings, and you suddenly feel like, oh my goodness. And you can then very easily get attached to some negative thoughts, some negative feelings. And I found myself physically sinking into my chair and thinking, I feel more and more disconnected from this space. I feel more and disconnected from where I am and who I am. So our minds become what they rest on. So if we've had an interaction, try not to let it impact the rest of your session that you're in, that social environment that you're in, or the rest of your day, and stew over the answers. So bringing yourself back into the present, I found connecting to the senses that we have can really help. So here are 3 things that I have found really helpful. Having a visual anchor helps to tether us to that calm feeling. So finding that anchor for pleasant emotions, or a visible reminder to connect to something that's really helped us to feel rooted and grounded. We respond really well to visual cues. So whether that's an object, so whether that's a piece of jewelry that reminds you of something that you can maybe look at or touch, a locket or something like that, or photographs. Our phones are brilliant. We've got photographs, maybe a screensaver that you've got that you can easily, quickly look at without having to scroll through lots of photos. Something that's immediate that you can hold. It's a visual anchor to your inner calm, inner sanctuary. It could be a favorite place, somewhere that it's very peaceful for you. Or it could be your ideal of a calm or bliss. Maybe it's a picture of a flower, a tree, something in nature. Nature's very calming, as we might know. Or something that I remember a therapist saying to me was, you can have a sweet, because when you've experienced something where you felt maybe a little anxious or overwhelmed, having the process of taking a sweet and sucking on it, it can really be self-soothing. So it's not only just the taste, but it's the action, and having something in the mouth which connects us to those early memories, those early feelings. So when you're feeling disconnected or unseated, that sensory cue can really help to bring you back to that glow of warmth and happy sensations. And placing your arms on your arms or legs. Again, when we think about self-soothing, we can just literally, even with just our thumb on our arm, we can find ourselves just giving ourselves a stroke, just that sense of, yep, you're okay. You can tap your arm, that's good. Or even down on your lap. If you're in a meeting, work meeting, under the table, you can just maybe just connect yourself then. Again, making sure that your feet are grounded on the ground, so that can really help you think, yeah, I'm okay. So that sense of strength really comes from staying true to your values and being authentic to yourself. And so knowing these tools and techniques can really align yourself to that powerful sense of inner resources. So it's building all of those resources, which can build your confidence in your identity as someone who's childless and maybe facing those questions of, do you have children? So trusting this alignment and that you've got those tools and techniques that you can draw on at any minute, before, during, or after, then will really help to free you from the worry about that question, do you have children? So I hope that's helped. We've come to the end of our time together and the end of my framework, Calm. So I hope at the beginning of your day or the beginning of these sessions, you really feel that sense of calm, of confidence, of that real sense of inner power. And it's been a joy to be with you. Thank you for listening. And I very much hope that you take away some journal prompts and that you've got time later on to give yourself time to consider some of the things we've looked at. So thank you very much. Thank you, Steph, for inviting me here today. And thank you for all of your questions and your comments. I have been looking at the questions and comments, so thank you so much for those. Happy to answer any more, to have a look at some more. Steph, over to you.